Welcome, everyone. Today, we are here to talk to you about some interesting ways that we view education. I have this concept of, I call it modular. I kind of think of it as like the IKEA version of education in the sense that I like to create courses that are more of a deep dive experience through the context of one subject into another subject. And thereby, we create this cross-subject meshing of topics. So today I have me, of course, and then my husband, Dustin. We are the two developers of Learn with Lumi. Why don't you say hi, honey?
Hi, honey.
Awesome. Just to get a little bit more into this idea, the concept is shorter courses, say instead of 160, 180 day course, taking, say, high school psychology. So one of our favorite sources is OpenStax. They're out of Rice University. They create textbooks for high school, a little bit of middle school, and up through college courses. Lots and lots and lots of fantastic open source material. The idea is you could take, for example, their psychology course, and you could build, let's say, 4 different courses that cover what that psychology course would cover as the foundational material that we then build on top of by delving into, say, behavioral science, getting into chemistry and biology and how, getting deeper into those and how they affect psychology, and using sources like authors who work in the fields of psychology, behavioral health, all sorts of things, actors even, because actors have to use psychology for their work. You know, anyone who uses psychology, creating this like 4-course psychology course that can delve more deeply into these other subjects and create something that, number one, the student is far more interested in. Number 2, material that the student can see why they're learning it. So they can see, for example, if they decided that they wanted to be a behavioral analyst when they grow up, they might decide that they want to do that because they got to experience psychology through the lens of a behavioral analyst.
Yeah, the key point that you made there was, that you're taking a standard textbook and creating a shorter course, but then actually augmenting the course with other short courses that delve more deeply into these individual topics. Doing it that way gives you a lot of interesting ways to launch a subject into a direction that is more consumable by a student, more relatable by a student, and actually more useful for their ultimate career choices, whatever those may be. A big theme of what we're doing with Learn with Lumi is to develop courses that are going to serve the student in their life in a more complete and effective way.
We've talked about ways that you could use this with, say, math, since math is one of the more challenging subjects to really get a student to want to get deeply into. You know, how many students tell you when you ask, what's your favorite subject at school? Math. And then that's when you like kind of have a little heart attack, right? That's not happening very often in my experience. And so I feel like you had some good ideas of how we could take math through the lens of a variety of subjects that a child might find really exciting.
That's the wonderful thing about math, is that it is ever present in everything that we do. And that's the exact opposite thing that we're taught in elementary school about math. Other really wonderful thing about math is that you always build on a foundation. You don't have to memorize anything. You can take it in an entirely new direction, because what it is at its heart is problem solving and developing the fundamental skills for problem solving. Whereas the way that it's taught right now, where students are forced through a certain textbook, a certain path of learning, that every single student is expected to go through the exact same thing and get the same exact thing out of it. And what happens is about 1 in 10 people get anything good out of that. The rest are left piecing together a sense of what math is, even if they're good at math. The reason that they're good at math is because they've developed coping skills and methods of learning that are not optimal. That are based more on rote memory learning instead of understanding the fundamental progression and inductive nature of mathematics. That's what introducing these additional anecdotal type of courses that get you out of that rut of math and start to build a more comprehensive mathematical mindset for the student, which is what's really needed. I use math in almost every single day of my career, and there's always a good reason to be using math in terms of making almost any decisions in life. So if we can imbue students with that sense and appreciation of math, instead of the dread and boredom that it currently inspires, we can go pretty far.
One of the things that I've found to be, I think, important is the concept of, with students, doing project-based work. So for example, math taught from the perspective of like architecture or civil engineering. And I'm thinking even in elementary school levels, you bring it down to the level where the child is at, and they could learn their entire math for a 40-day period. We could change it up every 40 days. We could have different levels of different versions of math, whatever's interesting. Whatever ends up working as we test this out, but where they learn their math with the idea of, okay, we're doing a project. We have this, civil engineering project, teaching them the patterns of being ready for working like that. And one of the things that I love, for example, is now that my son is 16, I had him get a LinkedIn. Now, we all have the way we feel about LinkedIn, but I think it's important to get into the habit of recording the work that is presentable to the world professionally, and doing work that's presentable to the world professionally. I mean, personally, I think that there should be some sort of professional-ish platform for young students, even in a way that's completely safe for students and all of that, where that they could do this kind of project-based work and share that work so that students could learn from one another. And so, I mean, do you think that that is something that is viable, or am I just being a dreamer? Like, could you teach math through the lens of architecture, civil engineering? There are so many ways.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the activities that I'm working on, and by activities I mean we're building these math activities that can go as deep as a student wants to go. Is the goal, that we can go further with any given topic. And one of those would be to build around CAD, computer automated design as a basic concept. Because again, it's not just learning arithmetic. Arithmetic is not mathematics. Mathematics is representing this universe in a way that we can talk about. That's a big part of what mathematics is. And so if a student had blocks that they can play with in real life, but then they could also take measurements of those blocks and then reproduce them and have them show up on the computer screen, and then use the computer screen then to design structures out of those blocks that they then build with the blocks that they have. That teaches so many aspects of mathematical learning that are relevant today. How we need to think about we do things today, while also providing all the ways that you need to teach arithmetic, to teach multiplication, and to understand surfaces and areas and volumes. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. I'm a polymath by virtue of I just go in all sorts of different directions, and I've gone very, very deeply into photonics and mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. And each one of those has insights that are fun to play with, fun to work with, and give students a real sense of accomplishment when they work with them. But also it can be highly mathematical, and where there's lots of interesting problems to solve.
So one of the things that kind of strikes me about this, like as you described the blocks and how you can kind of go from that into the kind of CAD world, it's almost also, ironically, gamification. But then as I'm listening to you, I'm realizing that in real life, in our work, I have the tendency to gamify in my mind the work that I'm doing. Like I call my GitHub my real life XP. And I was never even that much of a gamer. Like I didn't even game until I was quite old. But I found the value in finding that part of yourself that wants to achieve for the sake of achieving, which I guess I've kind of always gone that direction just because for me it's fun. But I feel like in a way we can kind of use both of those to the student's advantage. The idea of real world-esque experience in whatever subject it is that they're doing, and the idea of gamifying it to help them not only stay engaged, but to learn to gamify their work for themselves as they move forward. I mean, does that sound like something that only I would find interesting, or is that?
Well, I think it's something that many would find interesting, and that's what we want to look at are things like that where we can motivate a class of students, a group of students, or a subpopulation of students, to do more than they're currently doing. And it's going to be different for each, kind of subgroup. There's going to be different preferences. But a gamified system such as that is going to be core to a lot of the things that we would want to do, because even if you're not going to be motivated by the accomplishment part of the gamification there, the other parts of how we would implement gamification are still going to provide benefit. For instance, the breaking down of tasks into manageable pieces, regardless of whether or not you're then going to care about the score or care about checking off all the boxes. Just having things broken down in that manner and learning how to do that is an important skill. One thing we do know about all students is that they do want to accomplish things. That there is a dopamine reward for accomplishment, no matter what. And what they actually like to do the most is solving challenging things that they can make progress on and feel like they've accomplished something. They don't want to have an unachievable challenge. They don't want to have something that they cannot do, no matter how hard they try. You have to find the right balance there. And again, with an intelligent system, you're able to hone in on exactly where a student is and always be able to give them those achievable challenges. But what we're building though is an experience point based system instead of a grade based system. Our approach to mathematics is going to be more of an experience point based system. And every single activity, every single problem that a student solves will give them experience points along different abilities. Whether it's in counting and multiplication, addition, number sense, all the way up through trigonometry, and getting achievements for each step that you've. Once you reach a certain level of experience, then you'll graduate from that particular ability. You go up in level in that ability. And there's lots of math abilities that you can track. And this will be a very interesting thing to see how students can utilize something like that, where it's like a video game and you're just trying to fill in your ability tree, except in that process, you're the one getting better, not the character on the screen.
Right. And one thing there are a few things that you said that I think definitely should be mentioned. Number one, the problem solving that you mentioned, that goes without saying. That is something that all students need to be focused on. That is something that all humans need to be focused on. That is something that kind of needs to be a driving force in our lives. Problem solving. That's a lot of the human experience. Also, critical thinking. That is something that is really, really valuable. I think that in some education systems, it's being recognized more. But I think for a while, it's been kind of hard to be a thing that we can kind of quantify how the student is doing. But I think with this system, that is possible.
Well, I think with critical thinking, we have to get past the point of where we think we're grading students on the basis of trying to find out what they know and then compare them to one to another. And what our system is ultimately going to be based on is assessing the student only for the purpose of figuring out what they do next, where they are, so that we can make good decisions about what the next activity is what they should be doing. If you do that and you walk them up these skill trees, then all the other tests are going to be easy for them. They're going to build on a foundation of skills and be prepared for all the other things that school might throw at them.
I was at an event 2 weeks ago and had asked the presenter a question about AI and education. And so I was asked a question about our platform afterwards. And the question essentially was, okay, with how you do things, how are we going to compare students? ACT, SAT, blah, blah, blah. Like he just said, I think that the kids will actually be more prepared for those tests by having followed this path to get there. But I also think that the world that we're moving into, and I think a lot of what's going on right now with education kind of points in this direction, that education is going to change. Or at least right now it has the chance to change. And I think it needs to change. And so I think we should take this chance for change and try giving kids what would make them happy, invite them to succeed, make them curious so that they succeed. Will make parents happy because they're seeing their child happy and succeeding, and will lead to kids who are so much more ready for the real world and the kind of work that they're going to need to be ready to do. You know, the world is changing in the blink of an eye. Things are changing right now. And I think that a new education system is necessary if we are going to have a workforce that can even handle what's coming. I don't know if that's too big of a bite to bite off, but, you know, like I say, I'm a dreamer, so.
Change is needed. Most of the education system that we experience today has not seen a lot of change since the 1800s. And in math education, more than anywhere, even though we've had data for at least 50 years that says that there's a lot better ways to do things than the way that we're doing them. There's going to be a lot of change, and that's going to be forced by AI is forced in the hands of education. Because if we don't get in front of this, if we just continue this path of where there's a contention between schools and students are always trying to outsmart the schools so that they can get past any given grade and get the grade that they want through the use of AI. That's an arms race that we shouldn't have to be involved in. What we should use is find a way where we can direct students to the easiest way to integrate AI into their education is something that will lead them to a better education. The problem is that the way that we stress grades and the way that the idea that it's all about getting these grades is exactly the reason why AI is currently rather detrimental to education, because if all we care about is the grade, then there's all sorts of ways to cheat that system, and there always have been all sorts of ways to cheat that system, and that's because it's a broken system. The thing that needs to matter the most is what is the student doing with their time to prepare them for a life of self-actualization. And if there is anything through their youth that distracts them from that process, or does not contribute to that process, we need to get rid of it. And we know a lot more about how to do this now, but the key is we can't get rid of it. We can't do anything as long as it's one person standing in front of 30 students trying to communicate the same message so that they all learn the same thing at the same rate. As long as we do that, we can't get there. So we need tools that allow for the customization of education, and for the first time, we can do that economically. Without having to pay $30,000 a year per student, you can get very high quality one-on-one education that approaches the best that you could get from a personal tutor. That means that things are going to change. If we care about education, if we care about the things that matter for students to learn, to prepare themselves for life, if we care about those things, a lot of things are going to change.
And so we'd really like to know, your thoughts. So comment, get in touch with us. You can find all the information necessary to get in touch with us in all sorts of ways in the description. And we would just love to start a discourse with parents, with educators, with students even, to really know, does this resonate? I personally believe that it's necessary. In my mind, it's like, well, I hope it resonates, because we need to. But it is important that we find a way to transition through the next, let's say, decade or two in a way that's not scary for anybody. It could just be exciting. It could just be amazing and wonderful. We could just give the kids what will make them successful, will make them happy. We'll invite them to find their passion in life and have a life goal. The one thing that will make your child not do stupid things as a child is having a life goal. I didn't do many stupid things as a child because I knew what I wanted to do with my life. And even if you're not right as a child with what you want to do with your life, just having a goal, having something that drives you will save you from yourself. And so I feel like it's really important that we be the vehicle that delivers that to the kids. So let us know what you think. thank you so much for listening. We appreciate every moment that you were here with us. So bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.